This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Forging Table. The mission of Undaunted.Life is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. At the Forging Table, you'll see a group of regular guys forging spiritual resilience by digging into God's Word, and we're welcoming all of you to come along on that journey with us. That's Russell Eustace, that's Zach Todd, and that is Ryan Horn. Now, here's the thing right from the beginning, Zach. Every time you touch this timer, for those of you just listening to this, you don't get to see the amazingness going on because the world's most simple. Somehow y'all have turned this this thing into a timer, so I think you have to twist it this way.
Y'all?
All right, no. So
I
you
was
just
set
hold
up
it.
for failure.
No, see. Okay, wait. We gotta wind it back. All right, to 0, and then I think as soon as you touch it like that.
There we go.
Okay. Right. So how many years total were you in education? So like K through like master's degree, like roughly like 20 years worth of education.
Something like that. Yeah.
And never once like timers and like small mechanical devices was not ever part of.
Notice how you had to like correct with multiple. All you told me was tap.
It's very difficult. No, I told you you were in charge of the timer is actually what I told you to do.
That's a true statement.
And then all of a sudden it's, as I'm doing my intro, I see blinking, which I've never seen before on this particular device. It's blinking. But guys, there's more important things that we have to get to today. And it's not just the Bible, because I've been reliably informed, because I know we're recording this in the past, guys. So if you're watching this right now, this is several months. We recorded this a couple of months ago. But Russell, you came into my house wearing a master's vest. I couldn't help but walk through church this morning and see a bunch of people wearing polo shirts with a cute little logo on there and their little golf flag and all that. And right from the beginning, I guess this is bad timing because we're recording this during Masters Sunday, and that's like apparently a thing. People think like, so what do people do like on Masters Sunday? They literally just like watch other people play golf. That's like a thing.
You eat pimento cheese sandwiches.
Okay.
Mint juleps.
And you watch them play golf.
Mint julep, I thought that was like a Kentucky Derby thing.
I like to have a mint julep.
Okay, you're just randomly, this is what I like to drink.
I was like, I've never had a mint julep at the Masters.
Yeah.
I went to a practice round, but I didn't see mint juleps. But
do they just drink like Arnold
cheese.
Palmer's there?
Yeah, that and the usual. But pimento cheese sandwiches, everything at the Masters, like the food is really cheap. Pimento cheese sandwich for like $1.50. Everything like that is super cheap. Any of the merchandise, they make up for it.
Okay. I heard that's where, because they have like almost no commercials or whatever, so they make their money, and they really don't make their money off of ticket sales either, because the tickets are what they cost, and if people buy them secondary, they're like, yeah, it is what it is, but they make up for it on like, it's like $80 million a year just on merch is what they sell.
The merch tents are crazy.
You get to witness champions at the height of their game, executing with perfection one of the greatest games ever invented on the face of this earth.
Do you watch other people play chess? Because that's also a game.
I thought he was talking about the guys that make the pimento cheese sandwiches.
Maybe.
Those are perfection.
Those are pretty solid. Yeah. No doubt.
I mean, is there like Checkers Saturday where you just watch guys just get after it? Like,
nah,
king me, bro.
If I want something really boring, I would have probably stayed up last night and watched that fight. So, or was that
who was fighting?
Oh.
Who was fighting?
Was it Friday night?
Oh, yeah, because, UFCs are normally on Fridays, right? Don't even have an idea. If you're going to talk trash about something, you should at least know when it goes down.
You talk trash about the Masters golf all the time.
I knew the Masters was going on because I at least have a colloquial understanding of this golf tournament that people know.
You had no idea.
You know what I do know?
Yeah,
y'all see me. Look, that's close. Rory McIlroy's in the lead going in today, and Bryson DeChambeau is right on his heels. How about that? I don't even watch golf, and I know that much.
He's a closet fan.
Yeah, right.
It's coming.
We just got
everybody's closeted.
We just got his golf. We just got him
totally coming.
Yeah, it's just me coming out. Coming out as a golf fan.
I got him coming out as a golf fan. I just got under his skin.
I knew putting you directly across from me for this batch was not going to be because I have to look at you the most, right?
And there's a glare off this light, so
because of your head.
Yeah,
like that's part of the problem. No, but okay, so but yeah, y'all actually like watch golf. That's like a thing. I didn't know.
100%.
I love golf. I love to play golf. I might even watch. I can't watch it.
Okay, how often because everyone at this table plays golf with me. So how often are y'all playing rounds of golf?
Sometimes I play 2 or 3 rounds a week.
Say in a month. How many times are you playing in a month?
I would say now in a month, I probably play like maybe twice a month.
Okay, twice a month?
I play probably 5 times a year. I used to play 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Whoa, that is so much golf.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm probably with you. I probably play 3 or 4 times a year. Used to play once a week. Was never any good, but used to play more.
Well, you asked me off air. They're like, how much golf have you played? So the thing is I didn't grow up playing golf. I think I played 1 or 2 rounds because like my dad didn't golf. No one I was around golfed. Like nobody. Well, actually, I had an uncle that was actually a fantastic golfer, but it was never really my thing. I was always playing baseball or wrestling or doing something else. But I was convinced, like, okay, if you can't golf, you won't be successful in life, right? Because you see all these things about, all the deals get done on the back nine, and you get your handshake deal on the 18th green, and whatever the thing was. But every time I would play, like whether I was playing with a group, whether I was playing just with another person, or it was like a scramble at a tournament or something like that, by the 6th or 7th hole, I would be so unbelievably bored. Because you're never going to be good playing that rarely and without anyone coaching you. But, I had a baseball swing, and so I had kind of this natural slice thing going on and all that. But, I mean, I went to the driving range all the time, and I was, like, actually, like, practicing with buddies of mine that were actually good. But it just got to the point where I'm like, I don't like this. Like, every time I come out here, I hate it. And so it's like, if this is what I'm going to do with my free time, I got to have something else that I'm just not, like, miserable the entire time.
I'm great for 9 holes. After that, I'm the same way. I lose interest. And I've hit more shots than most people will hit in 18, so I'm already got my full money's worth.
How many balls did you go through?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm usually out of balls. Usually it's trying to jump into the pond or something and grab some more.
My best thing with golf is whenever I would go looking for my ball, I'd never find mine, but I'd find 2 of other people's balls, and they were the people that spent money on really good balls, but they just weren't willing to go that far into the woods to search for their, Titleist or their whatever.
I started playing golf maybe like 2.5 years ago. My wife got me lessons and then fitted for golf clubs.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's why I got started in golf. And I remember talking to the golf pro, and he was like, "Well, how well do you, how do you play?" And he's like, "Well, what's your handicap?" I was like, "I don't even know what my handicap is." He's like,
"My handicap is golf because I'm terrible at it."
Well, that's what I was like. He's like, "Well, what do you want out of it?" I was like, "I want to play a hole 18 and not lose my ball." And he's like, "Okay." So now I probably lose goals, maybe 2.
So what does that translate?
I used to lose sleeves of balls.
Yeah.
Like I could never go out with a sleeve of balls. Like I had a bag full of balls,
and they were
gone. And they were terrible. But like and sometimes I would just hit a shot so bad, so far into the woods where it's like, I don't care. Like I would tell my partner, throw the ball wherever. Like I'll just hit it from wherever the next place is.
It's no different than JiuJitsu, right? Like I grew up playing early. Hold on.
Wait.
In the sense of you've got to progressively get better, and your interest will increase with that. Like I started playing when I was 6. So my real dad was golf pro on golf courses. His brother played in the Nike Tour. My dad's name was on the Wilson staff golf balls. And so I was kind of immersed in that. And then my stepdad, who raised me, played for business all the time. So I never had a chance. I was on a golf course all the time, working them, you name it. And as you get older, when I started to use that from a business sense, man, it was great. I mean, you connect with a bunch of people, you get 4 hours on the course, all that kind of thing. But then it becomes beautiful because of the places you get to go, some of the most beautiful places I have ever seen from an outdoor perspective. And then you kind of get a community of people that love doing it with you. So you kind of get immersed. And it's something you can invest in for your whole life, which I think is awesome. I've got memories with mentors and dads and family that I definitely want my kids to have.
And there's some similarities with, jiu-jitsu. I mean, usually by the time you're 60, your hip's out from playing golf or jiu-jitsu. Usually jiu-jitsu is about 35, 40, but Yeah,
because from your extensive experience with jiu-jitsu, didn't you do it for like 45 minutes once?
Probably. I jiu-jitsu'd enough that you played golf. So
No, I spent ridiculous amounts of hours. I actually do have a question.
I spent ridiculous amounts of time.
You spent 45 minutes one time.
I spent more than
jiu-jitsu.
45 minutes.
You didn't even take your socks off when you got on the mat.
I had those nice socks that had grips on them.
You got to have rougher feet so that your feet are the grips, right?
I didn't want to slip on somebody's sweat.
You're the guy at the trampoline park, like you bring your own trampoline park socks out there. You already got your sticky socks.
Like $4.
Good to guys. Okay, do we need to bring back up the sock thing for any of our new listeners?
I've got socks now. We're good.
Okay, well, wait, we have kind of come full circle on this. Russ, do you know what story we're talking about here?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I can't remember what precipitated it. Well, first of all, so here we are in Sunday school class, and Ryan's wearing a fantastic pair of either ostrich cowboy boots or caiman belly. I can't remember which. Caiman tail. So he's wearing these caiman tail boots. They're gorgeous. They're like cognac, light brown, whatever. And then I don't even know what I asked to get you to just offer up this information.
Oh, no. he didn't wear his. I was wearing my ostrich that day.
Oh, I
and
remember.
You got
I
your
remember.
new ostriches.
Yeah, I had some new ostrich ones, and there was like something on the inside at the very top of mine
Yeah.
that was like brand new, it's kind of rubbing. So it was like a thread that had come out, and it's kind of
And
rubbing
he
on my
goes,
legs.
I don't have any socks that go.
It's like my socks don't go that high. And this doof pulls up his he takes his boot off and he pulls up his jeans. He's got 2 different pairs of socks on. Okay, wait. He's got, well, it's not even technically, it's like 1.5 pairs of socks. So he's got normal, like athletic socks on. And then he's got like dress socks that he has cut the foot part out. So it's just like the tube part. And so he's got regular socks with these tubes on there
Extenders.
so that it wouldn't rub on his sweet little legs the entire time.
I think my wife has some of those that she wears with like
They're called
her,
pantyhose.
her
is
like
what you're thinking
boots
of.
or
Yeah, that's the
No,
word
I got
you're looking
some
for.
long dress socks.
Was that what you got for Christmas?
Yeah, I got them for Christmas.
Finally, he was so proud. He came up to me at church. He's like, Kyle, look. He was all bushy-tailed. He's like, look,
Dude.
I got socks that go all the way up.
It's
My
kind of
kids-
ingenious.
my
You
kid-
can turn any sock into a dress sock.
But that's the thing. I was like, oh man, I want to wear these boots, but I don't have any socks that go that high. So I was like, these ones got holes in them. I'm just
Solving
gonna cut
problems.
them up.
and
No,
you
no,
need
no.
the bottom
Problem
part to be
solver.
thicker than the dress socks usually
So-
are. So you get
No,
the thickness
I
of
got
the
the thick-
regular sock
Well,
with the
I
dress
like
sock.
the dress sock in my boot, and so I got the thickness of like the actual sock, so it didn't rub up against.
okay.
Right. See,
But
Russ
I'm
is
trying to help you out
no,
here.
just
No.
understand me here. Back when back when I wore these boots, I had to wear dress socks because I was so fat that my feet were just like swollen.
Okay.
So I'm like gone down like 40 pounds.
Yeah, it was
From like
okay.
and so now I can wear regular socks with my boots.
No,
Now,
see,
now
what
when
he
I
was-
wear the dress socks,
No.
it's too small.
Russ, you were trying to help him
Or too
out.
big.
What he was doing would be like if you only wore your vest in here, but then we just cut your sleeves off, and then you just
Right.
rolled sleeves up, and you've got a vest on and just your sleeves. That's
Right.
what he was
I
doing.
don't know what
Eccentrics.
happened. I was just trying to make some socks so I could
Solving
wear my
problems.
boots.
I like
Yeah.
it.
That
I
is
was
like
solving
the
problems.
basketball extensions. You know, you just
Exactly.
wore those with your polos. And we're like,
There could
You
be
could
a
do
market.
that.
instead of
It's
getting a
like
long sleeve
those
shirt.
fake tattoo sleeves.
I was, yeah, that's like what I have on right now. No, I was actually trying to bring it full circle to the jujitsu thing, jujitsu golf. Here's my confusing thing is, so if you do jujitsu 2 or 3 days a week for, how long have I been doing it? 8 or 9 years? Like you may or may not, you will very likely not be world class, but ain't nobody in a random room of dudes whooping you. Ain't nobody whooping you unless they've got, some sort of freakish genetic advantage, 350 pounds with abs type situation. Maybe. But you hear about these guys that golf 2 or 3 times a week, and here they are 10, 12, 20 years later, and they still absolutely suck. They're
Yeah.
just absolutely atrociously bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, it's a really, really difficult game, but it's like the payoff for jiu-jitsu is it sucks the whole way, right? But then one day you're like, okay, I'm not good forever, but like I'm pretty good no matter what room I'm in. Like it's not going to be a problem for me. But with golf, you just feel like people don't ever get there.
They're just levels, like some of these guys are just naturally talented. Like I mentioned, my uncle, he's the kind of guy that wouldn't pick up a golf club for like 5 years. And then he was recruited to play in the superintendent's course, the golf, what's that called? John Deere Classic. And he goes out and shoots at like a 64 day one, just natural. And I've got other family, it's not the same thing. Like you just got to have the reps. What I found is when you're playing that 3 or 4 times a week, then your strokes are definitely going to come down. And if you get somebody helping you, like you get in jiu-jitsu, you're exposed by definition to another person that's rolling with you, making you better. I think a lot of golfers just get out there and kind of take, golf course advice and try to get better. But if you become disciplined about it, you invest in it, you're going to see some increases.
I've been playing for 2 years, and I got a faux hole in one. So
What does that mean?
It's not a real one. What happened was my brother talked to my swing when I was on this hole, and so I basically got a mulligan, and so I went and hit again,
oh, okay.
and I got a hole in one.
No, that's a real one. That's a real one. You actually
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
it. Like screw your
Yeah.
brother. What's
Okay,
wrong with
yeah.
him?
He was like,
No.
"Oh, dude, hit that again. Sorry,
No.
man." I was
So
like,
really, it's your brother's fault that you got a
yeah.
hole in
I
one.
mean, you got to look at the
Did you think?
happiness. Oh, dude, we were both excited when I got that hole in one.
You should be
But
excited.
I've only been playing for like 2 years, and I got a hole in one.
That's incredible.
So like, it
Very good.
happens.
All
You
right.
know, like you get better at golf. Like I'm not a very athletic person. We both know this.
It is actually
So-
really funny. The very first hole I ever played in golf, I birdied.
Oh, nice.
And I was just like my buddy. So do you know Kyle Perkins? All right. So
Yes.
anyway, I don't know, it's not going to make any sense to anybody out there that's not named Kyle Perkins. But anyway, really good golfer, like all that type of thing. And so he's going out there, and I'm like asking him, like, hey, I don't even know, do I tee this up right here? What do I do?
Oh, yeah.
And I not birdie, but I had a chance for birdie. Like I was putting for birdie on the first hole, and he is like piping mad. He's like, what? Now, I just fell completely to pieces after that because I was like, oh, golf is easy. And then the second hole, I was like, oh, this is absolutely miserable.
Golf.
Yeah, and so that's basically how that goes. Now, to wrap up this golf thing, because for whatever reason, we've talked about golf for 15 minutes.
I knew you'd
on
come
my
around.
show.
Great.
I knew you would.
Hey, what we got out of this is Kyle is a closeted fan of golf.
100%.
Hey, I've told you and I've said to people before, it's not like I won't ever play golf again. There just has to be a good enough reason. So if there's a fundraiser like for a kid and all that, and they invite a whole bunch of people to go and play, and like, hey, let's get that random podcaster guy with the angry face, like let's get him out on the golf course, and I will absolutely go out there and play. I'll take my little clubs.
You heard it.
Yeah, and I'll like, dude, I've got clubs that have literally never moved out of the corner of this of my garage. It's been here for like 7 or 8 years. They've been there. They're there. They're ready to go.
Donnie shows us them every time we're in your garage.
Yeah, Donnie,
like, these
like,
exist.
They actually do exist. But I will say, I did hear a story recently. I forget the 3 players, but there were 3 baseball players, major leaguers. I think it was Jeff Francoeur when he was like at his peak, which would have been probably with the Braves. I think it was John Smoltz, maybe somebody else. But anyway, it was 3 Major League Baseball players that were scratch golfers, which means they're right around like par. Is that what that means? A scratch golfer? Or their handicap's like 2 or 3?
Yeah, that's close.
Yeah, so they're right there. Mm-hmm. And they played a round with Tiger Woods. And this was Tiger Woods when he was like, before everyone found out about
before
all
the Waffle House.
Right? Yeah. What was Waffle House?
Dude, he got that's what he was picking chicks up at the Waffle House,
I
like
didn't know that
waitresses
part
and
of it.
whatnot.
Okay, well, yeah, before Waffle House, before his wife saved him by chasing him down his own driveway with a 9-iron and all those types of things that we were told that we needed to be convinced were true. They're playing around with golf, like, red shirt Sunday golf, Tiger Woods, right? And these 3 guys, they're playing best ball, and then Tiger's just playing, right? And I think they said they lost by like 10 strokes. And so we're talking about levels.
Yeah.
And they also said that on the golf course, the most intimidating thing about Tiger is that he wasn't intimidating most of the time. Like driving around in the cart or walking to his ball or doing whatever, like he's making jokes, like they're doing bets or doing all kinds of things. But they're like, when he approached the ball, it was like, everyone was like, it was like Mike Tyson, like walking like to the ring for a fight. It was just like, he completely zoned in for that, 15 to 30 seconds it took him to strike the ball. And then as soon as the ball landed wherever it landed, he was back to just kind of being chill. And so the fact that he could like gear in and gear out, they were like terrified.
So I saw that firsthand. I went to Tulsa when they had it was either the Open or the Championship. I can't remember, at Southern Hills.
Yeah.
I waited all day. I got literally right behind the rope on a par 4 where I could see Tiger teeing off. And this has been 15 years ago. So like he was in his prime, Phil and all those guys were out there. And the iconic thing happened as I was sitting there. He was addressing the ball. He was getting ready to hit his driver. He winds back to take his shot, and in the middle of his backswing, a camera clicks.
Oh,
and
okay.
on his downstroke, he stops on his downstroke and steps back.
And he's got a violent swing. Just stopping is like insane.
Violent swing.
Yeah.
The mental and physical part of being able to stop yourself is a level of discipline that I'll never understand. Right. And he did. And then he got back up. He approached the ball. He didn't say anything. You could tell he was frustrated, but he got back up, got back to business, and just absolutely destroyed this drive. And it was probably, 20 yards further than most of the guys that I had seen up to that point. But I mean, that's an example. But I think when you talk about mental, spiritual, and physical discipline, he was hitting it on 2 of them. But I think that third one, we got some issues with.
Man, he can have discipline like that at the tee box, but not at the Waffle House?
A little bit too much Waffle House in that guy's diet. Well, yeah, again, and you did hear it here first. If there's a good enough opportunity to golf, I will blow all the dust off those clubs that are in the corner of the garage, and
it's
we will
going to
get
happen
after.
this year.
And dude, I'm not even
I
playing.
will invent it.
I'm Happy Gilmoreing the crap out of the first drive. I'm just freaking yipping out of here.
Let's have a good time.
Technically, this is a Bible study podcast. You wouldn't know that by the first 20 minutes. But hey, it's Master Sunday, which is apparently a thing. But we do need to get into Genesis 32 if that's okay with everybody. So Ryan, let's go ahead and dig into Genesis 32. Let's go ahead and read. Actually, you've been talking too much, Russ. Switching it out. Just kidding. No, we're actually switching. But Russ, you got to read. We're gonna read. Yeah. Are you?
It's because there's no hard. There's no hard names.
I'm a little worried. You can read this. This is like size 5 font in this Bible.
Good. It's
Is this
good.
travel Bible? You can read this?
Who was it
Okay.
that had the checkbook Bible? Was that Dagan or Caleb
The
Williams?
checkbook? Oh,
Remember?
that was
Caleb.
Martin.
Caleb.
Oh, Caleb Martin.
Yeah.
That's who it is.
Caleb Martin had it.
Caleb
Yeah.
Williams, as you can tell, I'm a Bears fan.
Well, when you said
So,
checkbook,
yeah.
I thought you were talking about Howard, who had money coming out of his
yeah.
Bible like a few weeks ago.
Oh, Bill Johnson over there?
Yeah, I was like, bro, what, are you doing? That's the Joel Osteen version of the Bible. What is it? It comes with the dollar
that
bills.
one that came with the dollars, not the healing.
Technically, it's a
So-
Bible study podcast. Technically, it is. So, Russ, save us right now. We need the first 21 verses of
All right.
Genesis 32. Ready, set, go.
Genesis. It would be
Are you
helpful
sure, dude?
if I could say the name of
We
the
can just
book.
skip right on to Zach. Are we good?
Okay, yeah, this is going to start out well.
Ready,
All right.
go.
All right, here we go. Chapter 32, verse 1 through 21.
Yes, sir.
All right. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep, goats, and male and female servants. Now I'm sending this message to my lord that I may find favor in your eyes." When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and the herds and camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the other group that is left may escape. Then Jacob prayed, "My God, O God, of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers and their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself, and to his servants. He said, "Go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds." He instructed the one in the lead, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, who do you belong to, and where are you going, and who owns all these animals in front of you? Then you are to say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us." He also instructed the second and the third and all others who followed the herds. "You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, and be sure to say, your servant Jacob is coming behind us." For he thought, "I will pacify him with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps he will receive me." So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp.
Awesome. Thank you, Russ. And what version is that you read from?
That is the NIV.
NIV. Okay, guys.
Is that acceptable?
Ish.
ESV.
Yeah, it's okay.
Or
It's not the message.
Or NASB.
So,
Yeah.
all right. I mean,
That's
Andy
true.
Stanley uses the NIV, so
Sure.
just saying. You're going to be okay with that? Yeah.
I'm
All right.
all right.
We can maybe help you graduate to another version by the end of this. No, so let's get into the first thing here, because I got to tell you, this was one of those things where when I read it the first time, I don't know if I just wasn't ready for words to process in my brain, but whenever I reread the very first two verses, I was like, wait a minute. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And then when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called the name of the place Mahanaim or whatever, which basically means two camps. One camp is where Jacob, his wives, children, flocks, and all those people were. And the other camp was God and the angels. And I was like, wait, hang on. Like, so there was an actual camp, and like God and angels were like chilling in one camp, and you were on the other campsite. And when I went and dug into, I think 4 different commentaries, not a peep about it.
Yeah.
Like they basically explained what Mahanaim or whatever is it means two camps. But aside from that, it was like, okay, these were definitely angels of God, because it's only found 2 places in the Old Testament. They're describing it here, and then in Genesis 28, 11 through 13, which is kind of that ladder dream of the angels coming up and down the ladder. And so this is like physical in the flesh, angels and God chilling in this other camp, like legit chilling in this other camp, and like no commentary. So I went through Moody, Reformation Study Bible, ESV Study Bible, and there's one more I can't think of off the top of my head. And I was just like, none of them had anything to say about this. I was like, what's going on? MacArthur, that was the other one. They basically didn't say anything. So did y'all see anything or
Nothing.
glean anything on this first little bit? We're just cool. Oh, okay, yeah, there were just angels in another campsite across the way.
I didn't glean any of that from this, but you made me think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never. Are you looking something up, Zach?
Yeah, I'm
I
looking.
should probably. I guess I can put it in the Logos or whatever. But it's like I don't know if I was making too much of a thing about it, or if I was not supposed to be making too much of a thing about it.
Yeah, the only thing I heard is they just addressed it to say that for some reason he understood that they were the Lord's angels and that they were there for a purpose to set this place apart. And since it was set apart for them, he could consider it a safe place.
Right? Yeah, especially
That's reading a
considering-
lot in, but that's what I had heard.
But I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring up my Logos. I have trouble logging in. That's not their fault. My fault. Which, by the way, if you don't have the Logos Bible software, that's Logos. We have a link in the show notes where you guys can check that out at a discount. Used to you have to buy the entire like platform or whatever. Now you can just kind of do like a monthly sign up, use the web app.
subscription-based
And,
now.
it's sort of more subscription based. So you guys can go and check that out. But you can check it out at a discount. So went ahead and mentioned that. But if anybody sees anything on that, feel free to fire away, or we can just keep moving on.
Going to my Bible.
I got nothing. The only thing Wearsby kind of talks about is the fact that he really wasn't relying on God, by calling Esau Lord and kind of crafting his own plan for how he could be, real smooth about sending these gifts and all that. He wasn't really relying on the Lord.
Yeah, I that's what I really got out of it. Was like, you look at Jacob setting up this ransom, just saying like, hey, like he's plying them with something, like don't kill me, but he doesn't trust in God. And that's kind of brought me back to a sermon last week at our church from Philip DeCourcy.
Yep.
And he talked about how we can talk about our affliction and say, I'm dealing with this, and this, but God will handle this, maybe, like rather than starting with God and being like, good gracious God, we have this going on, but I am dealing with this. So it's like you notice that he starts talking about his fear and everything first, but then he goes and starts relying on the promise that God had for him, and he starts reiterating that promise, but he still lives in the fear because he doesn't believe the actual promise.
It's a weird thing. We've talked about it at this table multiple times, but how do you discern when it's appropriate to just be patient and sit with when we should be doing things? I mean, God calls us to be diligent. That's all over his word. So like, when are we supposed to use the faculties and capabilities that we have to try to craft some sort of a solution or advance the ball versus when we're just supposed to sit?
Right.
It's a hard thing to think about.
Because it did make a little sense. And then you read the Proverbs, and some of the Proverbs speak to things like this about providing things for the people that you serve and being wise about your gifts, that the wise man will gift the king and he'll have the king's ear and things like that. It also talks about, and I think that Jacob is feeling a little bit of this, but the proverb that says a man's wealth is his ransom. Like he's also realizing, oh man, I'm here and my brother's coming and like I've got a lot. Like this maybe if I didn't have so much, it wouldn't be worth it for him to mess with me. But he can't deny that I did receive Dad's blessing, and that's a sore subject.
And I thought it was strange that he actually divided up the camp, and that just kind of showed that he didn't have his faith in what God could do, because he divided up the camp. He sent one
kind of hedging
people
his
this
bets
way.
a
Yeah,
little
he's
bit.
hedging his bets, and he's like, oh, and then now I'm going to go ahead and give this, and so we'll find out later on how Esau reacts. But
Yeah, and are you caring for God's people effectively at that point? We're going to divide this, send you off over there just in case.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we see here is that Jacob is still a schemer. Like we just see that here. I mean, if you go starting, I guess, in verse 8, if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then this camp is left and will escape. And so all of us at different points, like we've been in sales, we've been in management, we've dealt with teams, we've ran businesses, all those types of things. You have to scheme. We look at the word scheme as like that's a bad thing, but it's like, hey, you have a scheme. If you're a football coach, you have a particular scheme for a particular part of the game. If you are down or up by a particular amount, and you basically run an offensive scheme or a defensive scheme, like it's a good thing to do that. But I think this is where I guess it's a Jobyism. I don't know if he stole it from somebody else, but his thing is pray, guess, go. Pray, guess, go. And a lot of people get stuck in two ways. They either get stuck on one of those three, or they get stuck not starting the first one. Okay, so it is pray, guess, go, and it is in that order. So you pray to God, like, what is your direction? What is your will? What are you telling me to do? What is my next step, right? then you try to surmise, guess, like, okay, I think this is what you're saying, right? Is this what you're saying? Please give me some confirmation. Please make it more clear, settle my heart on this issue. And then you got to go. So there are people that are experts at the pray guess, right? Pray. Okay, this is what I think God is telling me to do. Okay, I really am sure about this. And then they don't have any, effectuation of the idea. They don't ever just go. They don't ever kind of act it out. They don't activate themselves in a particular direction. And then there's also the part, like, it's not just pray, guess, go, done, right? It's pray, guess, go. And then along the way, if you experience resistance, is that a message that, oh, this wasn't the direction I had for you? Or is this like, no, this resistance is evidence that you're doing exactly what you need to be doing? So like, if every time I took a negative comment or, something not nice that somebody says about me or Undaunted.Life or something like that, as like, oh, that's a sign from God that I'm not doing anything. It's like, no, actually, because of the content of what's being thrown my way, it's showing that I'm more over the X than what I even thought before the comment came across my eyeballs. And so it's, again, you have to constantly go through that cycle of pray, guess, go, pray, guess, go. But at some point, you do have to have a plan in place. And I guess we just call it scheming.
Well, the thing that comes down to it, though, is if you look at Jacob throughout like this whole study, and we're going to see it again here in actual physical form on the next part that we read, he struggled throughout life to follow what God's plan was and trying to not make things happen the way that he wanted to make it happen on his own.
Yeah, to get his way.
To get his way, rather than let God do what God wants to do. Like God used what he did and did what he needed to do, but like you'll see a struggle between him and God, and we're going to see that here in the next within the next part of this story, and how that comes to a head.
I just think it's interesting because we're talking about it. The commentary here says, faith is living without scheming. Before we criticize Jacob, we need to examine our own hearts to see if we've ever been guilty of praying piously and then depending on our own schemes and resources. It's true that faith without works is dead, but Jacob's gift wasn't a work of faith because God didn't command it. The old saying, the Lord helps those who helps themselves, is totally unbiblical. True faith is based on God's word, and whatever we do that isn't motivated by faith is sin, no matter how successful it may appear.
Are y'all watching The Chosen? Have y'all been keeping up with that?
Yeah.
Is the new season out?
Stop it.
The new season is out
The
in
Chosen.
theaters.
I haven't seen it.
By the time y'all are
three
hearing this,
seasons.
it's probably out on streaming, whatever streaming thing is.
So one of the things that I love that they've done is they've shown how hard it is to follow Jesus and to not get ahead of your skis on scheming the next move. Like the disciples, if there's one thing that they've done a great job of portraying, is that the disciples are most human in their nature to go talk with Jesus, think they understand what he's doing, and then be like, oh, he's going to be so proud because I went and did this and like figured this out and went ahead and did this and this and this. And then he's got to bring them back. And that line that he keeps on saying is soon. Yeah. And he talks about, that's a funny word, that soon line, that like his timing is different. And I think we see some of this, and we'll see more of it as we go.
Well, and that's one thing that I've talked about a lot before, because I know people have their issues with The Chosen. Some people think the Chosen in and of itself is like a violation of the second commandment, because they think, showing Jesus like in a artistic form is, like making a graven image, which is ridiculous. And then other people are like, okay, these are, it's some Bible, but then it's a bunch of extra stuff that they're putting on top of it. But I look at The Chosen the same way I look at the 2011 book by John Eldredge called Beautiful Outlaw, which I've talked about on the Daily Blade. And it's basically, that was the first time after I read that book, and John Eldredge, like he's more poetic in his language and some of the things that he describes, and sometimes he takes poetic license, and he's very open, like, hey, I'm taking some license here. But I'm reading through that book, and he's like, look, you can't fall in love with a, how did he word it? It's like, falling in love with the caring and compassionate Jesus, that is what most people think of, is like trying to fall in love with a get well card. It's like, no, it's too two-dimensional, right? It's like watching a television show without the volume on. And so if you read through certain passages of scripture, like, and then Jesus went here, and then Jesus did this thing, and then there was another thing that happened, devoid of emotion, you take the manhood of Jesus out of him. Because yes, he was fully God, but he was fully man. He wasn't cheating. He wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm a man, but I'm not actually starving in the desert, y'all. Like, I'm God, like I'm good to go. Like, no, he was actually hungry. He was actually in the Garden of Gethsemane, like losing it. Like please take this cup away from me. He was actually suffering there on the cross. And so if he is a man, then he inherently has some sort of a personality. And so when you watch something like The Chosen, and then you read something like Beautiful Outlaw, it's like, wait a minute, Jesus had to have been playful. He had to have been like likely sarcastic at certain points, or like, no, you tell me, right? Kind of like how God communicates to Job, like, hey, where were you when all this stuff was going on, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing where it's like, hey, if you don't want to watch Chosen, I don't care. Like, just don't make it your hill to die on, that people that watch The Chosen are somehow doing something violative of the gospel. It's like, get over yourself.
I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah,
like, I was one of those people. I was like, I'm not going to watch it, but my wife and I like turned it on. Really enjoyed it. I think Jonathan Roomie does a great job playing Jesus and bringing some sort of character to him. Because I'm always used to the 1970s Jesus of Nazareth, where he's like all stern face and like
stern face white guy with a fake beard.
Just staring at you, just like it's like, oh man, he's staring at me like my dad does when he's mad. So,
well, I mean, Wes Huff here recently, well, it won't be recently, it'll be in the past. He got through kind of giving his opinion because he was asked about it at a Q&A or something that he did. And he was saying that, people now, when they're reading through the Gospels, they're seeing the actors and actresses that are portraying these characters or these true historical people in the Gospel accounts, and he's seeing those people in his head. But the thing is Jonathan Roomie, who plays Jesus, will be the first one to tell you, like, people will come up to him in public in tears because that's Jesus to them.
But that's the problem.
But here's the thing: is Jonathan will be the first one to say, like, I'm Jonathan. It is great to meet you.
And that's good.
Do you know Jesus? And like and again, for a Catholic, he's pretty dadgum evangelical when it comes to sharing the gospel message
in his way.
Right? Yeah. That's a good point.
But that's the problem. Like, I think that's where people are just trying to get their heads around things. Like, my first thing was like, man, people were watching The Chosen rather than reading the Bible. And The Chosen put out stuff out there for saying, like, no, this is a show. Like, you need to go read your Bible. And that's great. And I love that Jonathan Roomie comes out and says, dude, I am not Jesus. And that's the problem. And that's what people get worried about that second commandment, is that people start worshiping Jonathan Roomie thinking he's Jesus and this is what Jesus is like, when he's just playing a character.
It's such a tough space to be successful in. I mean, that same interview that you're talking about with Wes Huff, there's a guy named Ruslan on the stage. Do you know him?
Yeah, he's like a rapper, YouTuber or something?
He's a podcaster, kind of a faith podcast. He's pretty good. He was like, man, I know these guys. I know the guys that are making The Chosen. I mean, I've been to the set. I've been to their conferences. I've done all the things. And they're very clear about what this is and what it's not. And I think if they're coming from the right place, man, it's so useful because they're making it real, where you can feel the social context that he's bucking in a way that's very difficult to get when you're reading it.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, dang, this guy is serious. And if you said something like that today in that environment, I don't know.
So so this all kind of came to head because here recently, Douglas Murray did a debate with David Stewart on the Joe Rogan Experience, and it was basically about Israel. And at one point, Douglas Murray, because Dave Stewart's big on like Israel's the bad guy, they're the bully, these poor Palestinians, those types of things. And then Douglas Murray goes, hey, have you ever been to any of these checkpoints that you talk about, any of these areas? And Dave Stewart was like, well, no, I haven't. But the obvious point is like, you've never been there, so you can't make an opinion of it. And the opposite side of that is like, hey, well, I don't have to have gone to the Supreme Court to have an opinion on it, one of their decisions. I don't have to have experienced the gulag to give an opinion on it. But then somebody made it real, because I was more on Dave Stewart's side, to where it's like, look, I can have an opinion on something whether or not I've been there. But then someone posted a clip, one of the best scenes of Good Will Hunting, where Will is on the bench and Robin Williams' character comes up to him and he basically says like, hey, if I were to ask you about, Michelangelo, I'm sure you could spout off all these things from all these different historical books, but do you know what the Sistine Chapel smells like? Have you ever looked up at that ceiling? Right. And I remember for me, when I saw The Last Judgment for the first time, and then I looked up and saw the creation of Adam, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like this is unbelievable. Like, I literally just gave myself like literal goosebumps thinking about it. And it's like, it is different, because what you're doing is you're allowing somebody to visit something that otherwise, if they're not a super creative person that can't like create bones and structures out of narratives, like you're giving them an example. And I talk all the time about the woman with the problem of blood. That story never landed with me my entire life. And then that was a 3-episode arc in The Chosen season 3 or 4 or something like that. And I can barely talk about that part of scripture anymore without getting upset in a good way, just because it's like, wait a minute, this little girl was was the same age as the number of years this woman had been suffering. What do you want to bet that that little girl was born on the same day that this woman's problem of blood started? And then here they are, like, converging. This Jesus is going to resurrect this little girl from the dead, and he's touched by this woman who's had this problem of blood, and like he picks up her face and calls her daughter, and she had been completely expelled from polite society and from her family because she was not just unclean ritualistically, she was unclean as a person. The Chosen did that for me. And so it's like, people are like, well, you should have just read the Bible and got it and understood. It's like, okay, bad word that came to mind right now that I didn't say out loud. It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, that helped me understand the truth of Jesus and the gospel in an even deeper way.
My wife and I had that aha moment in a Chosen episode where, I was just watching it, but that aha moment that you had with that came with us when Mary Magdalene falls away. Like, she's following Jesus.
Yeah.
And then she goes back to her old lifestyle for like a day or night, and they can't find her. Yeah. And she comes back just broken and knows that what she did was wrong, thinking that Christ is going to expel her from the group. And he's just like, it's not easy. It's not easy to be who you are, to deal what you're dealing with this sin, but I'm never going to leave you. But I'm going to help you get through it, And it was basically, it's like, man, that was a perfect look of Christ's love for us, even for a non-believer and a believer. Because even as a believer, I fall short of the glory all the time. Mm-hmm. I do stupid crap daily that I probably should apologize for all the time. But knowing that Christ's love is unconditional and that he's going to walk with me through the whole thing, I think they showed a beautiful picture of that with somebody within who's actually walking with Christ.
Well, and even if you do something that's bad and sinful, it might shock the people at this table. It might shock the people that you live with. It doesn't shock God.
Nope.
You think Jesus was like, oh my gosh, Mary Magdalene, like, gosh, that was a hard left turn she took there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's not surprised by anything. And
he's not surprised.
And again, the point is not, okay, so go live a crazy, life, libertine life where you're just, I'm going to do whatever I want and, kind of just, go, with whatever whim and whatever direction that I want. It's like, no, that's not the point. The point is that Jesus knew that whenever he sacrificed his life on the cross. He knew you were going to do that.
The one that got me that always resonates is when they're sitting at the side of that pool. And the whole episode's that guy that falls out of a tree, breaks his legs, and then kind of chooses to stew in it and sit there. And then Christ comes, and what does he say? Do you want to be healed? Which is followed by a bunch of excuses and misdirection and all that stuff. And he's consistently looking at him despite all of that, saying, do you want to be healed? Right. Like, it's so personal.
Right. So I got one question here before we move on to the last half of Genesis 32, because I wrote this in the bottom, and again, I can, depending on my mood, be a little prickly, a little judgmental, a little rough, but I'm like, I already know the end of the story, but it's like I was rooting for Esau because I was like, Jacob, you're just a little wussy boy, like you're a little schemer, and you got out schemed, and now there's your brother and 400 of his like battle ready buddies headed your direction, and I'm just like, get him, Esau, get the little schemer. But it was just like, and again, I know Jacob was the one who's continuing, the covenant blessing, and not Esau, even though he was the eldest, and Esau was, he might be a good hunter and he might be a good outdoorsman and all that, but he's also a fool, and like he's just a hairy idiot is this guy. But like I just found myself like it being difficult for me to like Jacob, which again, we should not judge people that are historically described in the Bible as like, well, I don't like that person. Like, that's not exactly the point. Who really cares? But I just found myself being like, gosh, Jacob, like, okay, I couldn't root for the guy, and I felt like I was supposed to.
It's because he's not redheaded, and
we don't know that. Right? We don't know that.
No, Esau was redheaded.
You tell me there weren't recessive gene folk?
There
back
was.
In that
Esau
time?
was.
Right.
Esau came out a redhead. That's why you feel a connection with
But
Esau.
we don't know that Jacob wasn't a redhead. It just wasn't described here. Okay, but he probably had alopecia.
He probably did. He was probably bald and frumpy and
bald. Terrible, awful person.
So Esau, Jacob.
One thing that is actually surprising about what the Bible does say. So like where we're saying like don't judge these guys. In the New Testament, one of the descriptions of Esau is one of the biggest warnings about not being like somebody that we get from the Bible, where it says, and don't be like Esau who sold his inheritance for a meal. Yeah. And so like you do kind of see his plight, and then you kind of are like, man, he's got it hard. And then even later on in the New Testament, you read the New Testament authors are actually referring back to him and be like, And whatever you do, don't be Esau because he was dumb and did this. And you're like, man, the guy was just hungry. Like he didn't know his brother was scheming on him.
Hey, you know what? If we do get to like meet some of these people in heaven or something like that, like go up and it's like, okay, that's the room where there's the line to go see Moses or to go see like, David. I do want to go up to Esau and be like, hey, bro. Was it good though?
Yeah.
Was it a good bowl of stew or something like that? Because like, let's be honest, let's not pretend like all of us haven't wondered what exactly did Bathsheba look like to make David like murder a guy to like take over and all that. Like we got to be able to make sure that we can check these things out, ask some questions. I got questions. Okay, was it a good dill of stew? Like. Because I've made some good chili before. I don't know that I'd give up my birthright and my positioning in terms of the inheritance for my own bowl of chili or something like that.
He did finish it, and he knew at that point what it was costing him. So I would imagine he was hungry enough.
I think he knows how to cook because Isaac was like, hey, go find some wild game.
Yeah.
Cook me up my favorite meal.
Fresh backstrap stew.
I think he was just lazy. Esau was just like, oh, man, I don't want this already done. Yeah. Feed me. All right, I'll give you this.
I think it was entitlement more.
I agree.
We see Jacob. There is one thing in this first part that we see of Jacob that I think will continue on as we watch is he's pretty passive. And then he even tries to use that. He says, like, the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to pacify my brother.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to, like, do this, not really go confront, not really go have the conversation that probably needs to be had, but I'm going to try to pacify him first. And then as we go through some of these later chapters, we see that just continues. And it's actually a family trait. It goes all the way down. You see David do some of that when one of his daughters are raped.
Yep.
And
it's a weird deal. How does that observation compare, though, with wrestling with God to the point that you get your hip put out of joint?
Well, and that's why he's renamed.
Well, let's go ahead and get into the last part of Genesis 32 where Jacob plays a round of golf with God. Oh, wait, no, he doesn't, because golf isn't described in the Bible. But you know what it is? Wrestling. Wrestling's described in the Bible. So Jacob's coming off the top rope, Superfly Jimmy Snuka on to God here. So Zach, let's go ahead and read this. Starting in verse 22, just go ahead and read the rest of Genesis 32 for us.
The same night he rose and took his 2 wives and 2 female servants and his 11 children and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "What is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh.
So real quick, interesting note from the MacArthur commentary is he goes from Jacob to Israel. So Jacob is heel catcher, deceiver, right? The guy just a second ago, I was like, I can't really root for this guy. And then he turns into God's fighter, or he struggles with God, or he who wrestles with God, or something like that. But when we get into this section of scripture, there's been a lot of ink that's been spilled on, okay, was this really God? Was this God in a bod? Was he literally grappling with Jesus all night? Was this the scene from Fight Club where he's beating himself up in the office the entire time?
I've never heard it interpreted that, but I like that.
That was the first thing I thought of. I was like, okay, but because again, if you spoiler alert, Fight Club's like 25 years old, but Brad Pitt's character is not real. Okay, that type of thing. But it's like, is he fighting a real person here, or someone that's manifesting as a person, or is he fighting himself and it feels like he's grappling all night? Because some people are like, wait, no, this is just a dark night of the soul. This is just, you stay up all night and you're really wrestling with God, but this is more spiritual, because this smacks of actual physicality to me, and I don't really see the ethereal explanation. So I don't know where you guys land on it.
I find that the answer to that is kind of like the answer to people that talk about the creation story and they don't believe that it takes more faith to get there, that this wasn't what it says it is, than it does just read it as it is. Now, some people have said that God in person, I liked this. This is something that I've been trying to think through after I've read it, but that God in person, there's only one form of God in person, and that is the person of Christ, but that this could have been a pre-Christ
a Christophany.
Christ figure. Yeah, Christophany. And I like that because I've always struggled with, okay, so God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, well, you have Christ as the Son, as the man of God. And then how do you have God coming in the Old Testament? And that was a good explanation to me. So,
what about you guys?
I kind of agree with Russell. I think it's a Christophany. I think he's actually wrestling with God and with Christ. And I think we see him wrestling with God and with Christ, the Godhead, from the very beginning. From his brother to Laban to now, he's still wrestling. I like to ache in this too when I think about it. It's like, how we wrestle with our kids? Like we never use our full power, but they think that they're winning. Like all the time.
The Mufasa wrestling.
Yeah.
Mufasa.
Right. But then they start getting really violent. Like they'll punch you in the kidneys or something like that. And then you just give them a little bit of your power. And that's like how I think is like Jacob's wrestling God and he's going like all day long. So God could go all day long. It's like with my kids, I could go all day long. And then all of a sudden they think they got the upper hand and you just pop them like that. And they're like, oh. Right. And so that's how I kind of think of this is like God's like, hey man, you can struggle with me all you want, but I have the power.
Well, I don't know how y'all do it in your house, but in this house, I give those boys full man effort every single time. Like I just throw them up against the wall. I don't let them get a thing. No, obviously, no. I think that's actually a really good point because, again, all roads do lead back to jiu-jitsu. I don't know if you know that, but when you have these people that are like legitimate black belts, and you give them a trial class guy. This may be the first or second time he's been on a mat of any kind, training or something like that. No one that I know of, there's not a gym in the world that gives medals away for practice, right? They don't have like practice championships or things like that. And so as a black belt, your role is to not just sit there like a limp noodle and just let them hurt you or something like that. But also, this isn't like the finals for IBJJF. Like you got to show them something, but the point is not to hurt them or kill them. You just have to give them enough resistance. Because, people have talked about this, like whenever you see these football teams or like, I saw this one guy, a high school football coach got arrested because his team won 77-0 or something like that. And he got arrested for some random obscure bullying statute or something like that. But it's like, if you tell a football player, hey, only go about 75%, that's when you get hurt. Okay. You can change the offensive scheme. You're not going to throw the ball anymore. You're not going to run play action, but you have to still play the game. But it is interesting here that it's like, okay, if you're wrestling with God, there's really no point in resisting. But Jacob had to have at some point been like, no, I've got something here until he was incapacitated. Because that's the thing is everyone's really, really, really tough until they get injured. And then it's like, oh, crap, like this isn't very good. But he's hanging on for dear life here. And then at the end, he's like, hey, I'm not going to let go. But he does realize like, oh, my strength is not going to be sufficient here. I got to look for something else.
It says he's prevailed. But he didn't prevail as like this is what Moody says is like he didn't prevail does not mean that Jacob won the wrestling match by overpowering the man.
Right.
Instead, it means Jacob having in the end been forcibly subdued by God prevailed in receiving the blessing.
It's like whenever you give up, like he who gives up his life for my sake will receive it. Like it's complete upside down, bizarre world of the gospel.
Yep.
Other stuff on this section as we wrap up our discussion of Genesis 32.
I mean, the whole idea that Jacob, like the question that came to my mind is, why did he send everybody and all of his possessions out and then stay on the other side? Was he trying to gain rest? Was he trying to gain perspective? Did he need that time away? And then I heard somebody talk about the idea that also, why did God not want to give him that rest? It was like God was trying to wear him down so much. And that he was trying to be alone by himself, and then this guy shows up, wrestles him all night long, and then makes him admit who he is. I love that part with Jacob. He is trying his whole life not to live up to his name, and he just cannot not live up to the name of the schemer. And then in this particular time, whenever God asks him who you are, he has to admit to God in what sounds like a very legitimate wrestling match where there were no schemes that he could do. All he could do was hold on at the end. And he had to admit to God who he is. And at that point, when he admits who he is, he's everything that he has is across the river. Everything he has is gone from him. and all he has left is who he is before God, that's whenever God decides to tell him his name, which is...
Yeah, I couldn't find it in the commentary, but as you were talking, that's exactly right. It's something to the effect of God does his best work when we come to the absolute end of ourselves.
Yep.
And he creates the conditions for that to happen, and then all of a sudden there's some clarity and restoration.
And his last condition was he hurt. So Jacob always runs. He runs.
Well, he heard 400.
And he can't run with a bad hip.
400 men were coming.
True.
That's why he went off and split everybody up, and then probably went out and wanted to find peace and clarity, which he was probably sitting in his anxiety all by himself. Because when we sit in our anxiety, we're sitting in there all by ourselves. Nobody else is around us. And God just sat there and struggled with him the whole night, because his biggest struggle is his struggle with believing with God's promises. And so God's like, no, man, I'm going to sit here and fight you until you actually believe it.
Well, and also, if we're thinking in kind of a Sun Tzu art of war type of way, I bet you he thinks he's done. Like, Esau could kill me with his bare hands, but he's bringing 400 guys to back him up here.
Yeah.
And so I've got to put all the important stuff in this other camp or whatever, because I'm done for, right? Like, it's curtains for me, but I need my progeny to have some sort of a plan or whatever. And so it's kind of like, if you know you're done for, like, you're not going to keep all the ammo for yourself, as it were, kind of in a modern context. It's like, no, you're going to give the provisions and the supplies to the people that would go on before you. And so again, scheming to the end. But he gets to this point, and so he was without his own backup. He was without his plans, and now he's in this wrestling match. And I thought this was an interesting point, because people are like, okay, is this a Christophany? Is this the pre-incarnate, Christ and all those types of things? But Exodus 30:20 is like, no one can see God and live, right? And so that is even further evidence that this was Jesus. Like, this was very likely like pre-incarnate Jesus wrestling with Jacob the entire night. And I guess it does kind of work that way, like, almost toying with Jacob, like, hey, they're getting after it, but one guy's breathing hard and the other guy's in complete control. Even if somebody's watching and be like, oh, those two are really getting after it, one person just knows they're in control the entire time. So much so that touch the hip, and it's like, okay, the entire the entire setup of this is looking a lot different.
I think even Jesus says at one point that nobody has seen the Father, and so that always conflicted me about this verse until I read some of that. And kind of made more sense.
I think with what Ryan said, maybe that kind of brings this full circle. I feel like I've learned this lesson at this table a couple times when I'm thick, right? It's like, how do we know when to rest or to wait on God or to be patient? And as you guys talk, I listen to anxiety and the fact that he's scheming and he's having to put all these pieces together. So maybe the answer is, we should be using our gifts and talents and all that, but not from a position of fear and anxiety. And if it seems to be contradicting that, then we're probably on the wrong side of the equation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just a weird space.
Very good. But this is a great section of scripture. Like, again, this section of scripture, this one little section, I mean, this turned into a 500-page Jordan Peterson book called We Who Wrestle with God. And I mean, when you talk about, again, this is a non-Christian, this is for all intents and purposes, a secular guy that has a tremendous respect for the Bible and the lessons that we get therein for morality and humanity in general. But I mean, we need to wrestle with the text as well. And so I'm not being too like poetic in my language here, but whenever we're reading a certain section and we can't quite grasp it, if you're like me, you're wired to just keep going on. Like, you have to keep taking ground, even if you don't understand the ramifications of what's behind you. You got to keep taking ground. So we still got to get in and wrestle with the scripture. So guys, we're appreciative of all of y'all being here to listen to us as we discuss through Genesis. So come back here next week where we're going to be talking about Genesis 33 and 34. So make sure you're read all the way through Genesis 33 and 34. And one quick note, I've talked to a lot of guys here recently that have started their own forging tables. And so, we have the Crossway starter set, forging table starter set in the show notes. You guys can check that out. We got the Logos Bible software, but there are guys like at tables just like this all over the world right now that are following along with us as we are going through, and they're having their own discussion, and then they're watching us kind of discuss that same thing, and they're having their own banter, and they're talking about whatever's, specific to their particular group or all that. And so
golf.
We highly, obviously they're all just talking about golf. We're highly, we value that. We value the feedback. We are so thankful that you guys are taking this, because that was the whole point of this from the beginning, was not to, hey, let's just create some more content, but it was a model for you guys to be like, okay, this is how real dudes, non-professional pastors, non-theologians can just get around, having put in the prep work to earn a spot at their table where they could get together and discuss this. So we're so glad that you guys are doing that with us. So again, Genesis 33 and 34 for next week. But before we let you go, we're going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. I've already mentioned the Forging Table Starter set through Crossway. I've already mentioned the Logos Bible software, but I have not yet mentioned we are a donation-based ministry. So if you're wondering how we can pull things off, like, paying for headphones and internet and the electricity that runs through all this equipment and things like that, it's because we don't have like magical donors behind the scenes giving us tons and tons of money. It's dudes giving $20 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month because they believe in the mission of equipping men to push back darkness. So go to Undaunted.Life/donate or go to the link that is in the show notes and check all that out. Become a donor. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.